So let's get started. Hi, everybody, and we are talking about a project that we have just finished, and we are in the phase of analyzing the data. As you see, is a transatlantic partnership because it included us, the research team in Canada, and groups of Italian teachers. And I'm presenting with Andres Scholze, who's a PhD student at the University of Toronto, and the other two names are also PhD students who collaborated in the research and couldn't be with us today. So, advance. So the presentation is organized around the context very quickly, the methodology we used, some of the findings and the implication in the short time of 15 minutes. So we'll do our best. So why do you need to know a little bit more about the project background? Because this project we're going to talk today used resources and an environment, an online environment that was created in a previous project called the LINCDIR, Linguistic and Cultural Diversity Reinvented, which was a SSHRC-funded project, and also in partnership with different people and different researchers and teachers across Canada and other countries. In that project, we developed an online environment called LIGHT, Language Integration Through e-Portfolio, which is, as we will see, more than just an e-portfolio, but just to give you a sense. And then this informed two new grants. So one was a partnership engagement grant with SSHRC with the region of Lombardy. That is the region of Milan, for just to give you a sense. And it's, of course, geographically much smaller than Ontario, but it has the same number of inhabitants. And this project was followed up by a second iteration funded by the Italian Ministry of Education. So the iteration one was the one I said, partnership engagement grant, and was called the Supporting Online Language Learning, because it was funded in the period of COVID when the teachers had to, from one day to the other, move to online learning completely. And our idea was, how can we help teachers to make this online teaching still interactive, still group work-based, action-oriented, and plurilingual. So first of all, we explored the challenges and opportunities that the teachers in Lombardy faced with in the online education, with a very big survey that covered not only our participants, but basically 1,300 teachers across the region, whereas we had 85 participants. And then the idea was to go another step further to support the teachers' implementation of the plurilingual action-oriented approaches that we had developed in the LINCDIR project. The iteration 2 was the result of the success of iteration 1, because basically it went so well that the Ministry of Education gave some money to repeat it in 3 big regions. So again in Lombardy, and then Lazio and Campania, which are the region where Rome is, Lazio, and the region where Naples is. So kind of across the peninsula, and support again the teachers' implementation of plurilingual and action-oriented approaches, so same scope, but only with teachers of primary and junior secondary. Our theoretical framework, the theoretical framework we have been using in this project, and which had kind of informed also our work before, but it's like you mature with a theoretical framework as well, is around complexity theory, with 2 core points: action orientation and plurilingualism. And action orientation meaning that learning is never linear. And we have seen in the presentation of the plenary speaker how it's not like from A you go to B and there is only one path and everything is structured and clear, but it's really something that involves the students at a deeper level. The students become social agent, meaning students do in the language, they act, they are real users of the language. And the students, the class, the language, and our society are all complex adaptive system, meaning that we're all interacting, and a change in one element changes everything in the system. When we learn a new language, we're no longer the same person that before we learned it. When we are in a new class, there are new dynamics that change that system. Plurilingualism responds to that because it talks about interconnected repertoire. We don't have our languages well stuck in different compartments, but they are all intermingled. We have a competence which is constantly dynamic, improving in some parts, maybe decreasing in other, changing constantly, and it values diversity. Diversity is not seen as an obstacle, but as an asset. This theory informed what we call the 4 pillars that have informed how we produced this tool: action orientation, plurilingualism, the holistic reflection that were informed by a collaboration with indigenous educators, and technology. And we wrote a book with everybody involved in the Link Dear project. If you want to read more, you can read more. This is just to give you a sense of this light that is much more than a portfolio, because there is a part that is typical of a portfolio where you have a self-assessment and you receive a kind of visualization of your levels, but you see it's dynamic because you may be better at reading, much worse at producing, etc. But it also has a parts like one that mocks social media, where you talk about your own journey and people can react to that. There is one part which is more school-oriented, in the sense learning-oriented, where you have all your scenarios, and these are basically more than just tasks, are really a task with all the constraints and conditions and a real goal and some artifacts that you want to produce. And then there are reflection informed by the indigenous epistemologies. And here you see it's inspired by the medicine wheel of the Ojibwe community. And I leave to Andre to explain you the methodology we used and the first results.
So moving on to the methodology we implemented for this research project, they're mostly both iterations, they had a similar structure. We began with a pre-intervention survey, followed by the implementation of the pedagogical resources and tools, LIGHT, followed by a post-intervention survey and some semi-structured interviews with participating teachers. The only difference is that for the first iteration, the teachers also produced case studies that showcase and really highlight some of their own experiences that this we're going to be talking later, which ended up being compiled as a book for teachers. So just to give you a better sense of the comparison between the first and the second iteration, the first one exclusively to the Lombardy region, then expanded to the Lazio and Campania regions. And then you can see both team leaders and participating teachers doubled in size and numbers. So from 12 to 25, 84 to 169. And also the languages for the second iteration was just focused on foreign language, so Italian was not part of the second iteration. And also for the grades, we didn't target high schools, just elementary and middle school. So that was basically the difference between these 2 iterations. So what we could find from the survey 1 iteration, from the pre-intervention survey, and from the both surveys, the pre and post, is that online language education become and these are the basic themes that we noticed. They became more collaborative, reflective, and student-centered. So basically, what we found it really interesting was that some of the tools, resources, and modalities that were least used they became the most used during the intervention. So learning portfolios, because that was basically the structure of our online tool, but also collaborative activities and group work was really highlighted as some of the aspects that teachers enjoy the most and really start using the most after intervention. It's still some of the main challenges that were pointed out pre-intervention, learning engagement, and especially in the online environment, you can now relate to that. Then after implementation became the main opportunity that the teachers reported, and especially because of the nature of the tool that was really collaborative and with the tasks really engage them to collaborate and work together. So for the iteration 2, we also wanted to see how much of an impact the tools and resources that the teacher implemented affected them. So we can see that 3 out of 4 participants reported some impact on their teaching practices, and even more, all of them showed that the pedagogical tools influence their teaching philosophy. And a lot of times you first change, it's interesting that you first change your philosophy and then you implement it and in practice. So I guess it's still going. And then mostly more than 90% said that they are very likely to continue using these tools in the future. And many of them actually have. And then when we coded we did some inductive analysis of both the open-ended parts of the survey and the interviews, we could see that a lot of themes emerged, and you see how a lot of them are interconnected, like multimodality, allowing accessibility, flexibility, collaboration with more inclusion, authenticity, and that sense of community, and really shows a new way of teaching and learning that is more engaging, interactive, inclusive, multicultural, and plurilingual. And that's one of the teachers' quotes here. So just to explain a little bit more of some of the case studies that teachers produce, we have this one that's this coming book, but we wanted to highlight this one that was really interesting because it involved the collaboration of 4 different teachers in 3 different languages and across 3 different schools. So they all work together using the same scenario. So that's Lost in a New Town. They also use the German version and the French version. I'm not gonna try to pronounce those because unfortunately I don't speak very well those languages, but it really showed how these teachers were able to build on prior knowledge, develop some communicative competence, and really engage students in the tasks, fostering their learning more. So some of the implications of this partnership that we have with Italian teachers is that there's a lot of potential for the inclusion of plurilingual and action-oriented tasks to support, authentic and inclusive language learning. So the first quote here by the teacher focus really on the authentic, the real life situations that the scenarios bring to the class. So you have the school who usually takes students on exchange programs, and the teacher was able to utilize that scenario that really have them feel like they were there, and it's a situation that really can happen anywhere you are, right? And while the second quote here focus more on the inclusiveness for language learning and shows how it made students who come from other countries where often they are not really valued. It made them feel important, right? So it highlights that. So the second implication really focuses on the need for accessible and contextualized professional development that connects both researchers and practitioners. So basically connecting the theory with the practice and how the specific context that you are can play a big difference. And that's why it's important to be really contextualized and accessible for them. And I think this quote here on the left side really showcases that, because I think it's essential for teachers to have a possibility to cooperate and share information, right? Because every school is different. Every country has their own set of unique circumstances. So it really needs to be accessible, and that co-construction of the resources that are going to be put into place. So with that, we'd like to thank you for attending our presentation and welcome you to ask questions or comments.
If you have any.